Now I've had this phone in my stash for quite a while now, but never quite got around to fully reviewing it. So for the last week, I've stashed my SIM inside of Xiaomi's Redmi Note 13 5G. At £279, it's Xiaomi's most affordable Redmi 13 blower here in Blighty. With that latest, freshest HyperOS software experience, you've got a gorgeous 6.67-inch AMOLED display, a proper ruddy big 5000 mAh battery, and a 108 megapixel main camera. So pretty solid specs on paper, though you can upgrade to that Pro model for just a few extra tenors, which offers lots of upgrades. So what do I reckon of the Redmi Note 13 5G? Well, just keep on watching the video and you'll find out if you care. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe, ding that notifications bell, cheers! So first up, no real shocks or surprises when it comes to the Redmi Note 13 5G's design, but it is very smartly put together. As you'd expect at this price, it is fully plastic. You've got plastic edge and plastic back, and as you can see there, an iPhone-esque finish. You once again got those regrettably flat edges, which don't really feel comfortable to clutch, but hey, Apple does it, so it must be the best way, right? But even though this Xiaomi blower is near 6.7 inches in size, as you can see there, the bezels are surprisingly skinny surrounding that display. So this phone certainly doesn't feel cumbersome to grapple with, even one-handed particularly, especially as there is a one-handed mode. And it may well be a placky back here on the Redmi Note 13 5G, but I love the frosted finish. That matte design just means no grubby prints or scuffs. You can merrily hoy-poke scratchings or whatever greasy snacks you like down your throat while you're doing your bit of your Instagrams or whatever. Bit of Threads maybe. Remember Threads? Surely somebody's still on it. And that arse end will remain muck-free. And this right here is the Ocean Teal model, which I really rather like. It's a nice bright bold colour. Very soothing for the soul in those moments where you just want the whole world to burn. And I've got to say, Xiaomi's budget blower is a proper tough nut. You've got Gorilla Glass 5 coating that display with a screen protector slapped on top. And this thing survived a drop from near head height onto solid wooden flooring right here in the studio. Some beer may have been involved, some whiskey as well maybe, possibly Drambuie. But yeah, all that came of it was the teeniest, tiniest little dink in one of the corners, and that's it. The phone's still functioning absolutely fine, no cracks or anything on that screen, of course. Oh, and it's also IP54 splash resistant, so it can get a bit moist, which is quite handy as the weather has taken a turn for the worse here in Blighty, but certainly don't go dropping it in, baths, sinks, any actual body of water. That'll f it up. Now, when you want to actually use the Redmi Note 13 5G, you've got an edge-mounted fingerprint sensor here rather than an in-display one like the rest of the series. And I found this is incredibly hit and miss. Sometimes I'm straight into my desktop, sometimes it takes a few attempts to actually get there, as we did just then. I've tried re-registering my print many times, not with much success. God damn it. Anyway, if you do actually manage to unlock your smartphone, you'll find that you've got the latest, freshest HyperOS slapped on here rather than the old MIUI. It has been updated since launch here in the UK. And assuming my old notes on this phone aren't a bunch of drunken made up nonsense, you've got 4 years of security patching with the Redmi Note 13 5G, which is great for a budget phone, although sadly this blower only gets 2 OS updates compared with the 3 you get from the Pro models. But here in England, not only do you get 256 gigs of storage as standard, pretty generous at this sort of price point, but you've also got space in that SIM slot for a micro SD memory card. And this is actually the only Redmi Note 13 blower to offer that expandable storage. Good boy. Now, HyperOS compared with MIUI, very similar sort of setup and features, but it takes up a little bit less storage space, is generally more efficient, but I have seen quite a few bugs on this phone in my last week with it, certainly a lot more than I saw on the likes of the Pro and the Pro Plus. And so, for instance, you may well have spied that I've got the old school navigation bar down there at the bottom of the screen. That's because I had the usual navigational gestures, but occasionally I'd be in an app and those navigational gestures would just stop working, so I couldn't actually quit the app or go back or anything. The only real solution was to actually reboot the bloody phone, which, as you can imagine, got slightly tiresome. And there's plenty of other annoying bits, boy howdy, including an always on display that isn't actually always on display. It only pops up for 10 seconds after tapping. That's your only option. So hey, Xiaomi, by its very definition, that is not always on, is it, mate? And oh my giddy aunt, there certainly isn't any less crapware stuffed on here with HyperOS, that's for damn sure. In fact, if anything, Xiaomi has shoveled even more of it on here. All the classics like Tile Fun. Urgh. AliExpress, Booking.com, Facebook, LinkedIn, ugh, so much to get rid of. But you know, HyperOS has been running absolutely fine here on the Redmi Note 13 5G, and you've got plenty of good features packed in there as well. In fact, I've done you a full dedicated video all about HyperOS and some of the best bits and everything, so have to go check that out for a bit more info. So the software side of things could use some work, but definitely one of the highlights here on the Redmi Note 13 5G is that gorgeous 6.67-inch AMOLED display. You got a full HD resolution, so it's not quite as crisp and sharp as the 1.5K res displays on those Pro models, but the visuals here aren't exactly murky. I've certainly enjoyed kicking back with some Netflix, Disney Plus, etc. And likewise, there's no Dolby Vision support here, but you still get some crisp contrast. Those visuals look natural enough. You can tweak the color output in the display settings if you want. It's set to vivid by default, but I found the other modes don't really make a massive amount of difference. Slightly tweak the color temperature. And the panel here isn't quite as bright as with the Pro smartphone, so I certainly struggled a wee bit with glare on a particularly sunny day. You may potentially have to seek out some shade, but the refresh rate tops off at 120 Hz, just like those more expensive models. And also, sadly, unlike the Pros, it is just a mono speaker output, this dinky wee blaster here on the bottom edge for your media. But at least when you max out that volume, it's bloody loud and the audio's still pretty clear. Let's give you a quick sample.
So today's video is a spicy bit of three-way action, your mum's favourite, as I compare and review three affordable new Xiaomi 2024 blowers. The Redmi Note 13 5G, the Redmi Note 13 Pro 5G also, and the Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus, with the 5G of course.
So yeah, no real complaints other than the lack of stereo output, to be honest, and yeah, just a little bit of advertisement there. If you want to see how this phone compares with the Pro and the Pro Plus, definitely check out this bad boy. One of the more positive differences here on the Redmi Note 13 5G is the fact you've actually got a 3.5mm headphone jack if you want to get wired up. And as usual with Xiaomi's Redmi blowers, you've got a good bit of Dolby Atmos support. You've also got an equalizer that you can mess about with. And as for the performance, well, it's probably not a massive shock to hear that the Redmi Note 13 5G is a little bit limited, a little bit restricted in this department. You've got MediaTek's Dimensity 6080 chipset backed by 8 gigs of RAM here in Blighty. That's your only choice. And while everyday running is generally absolutely fine, I have found that the camera can be particularly slow on occasion to load up. Sometimes skipping between the various modes can take a while. And certainly if you're shooting the likes of a portrait shot, the processing can take a wee while. Come on. And if you are a gamer, well, certainly if you want to play more complex titles like Genshin Impact, you'll want to upgrade to the Pro models. But if you just want to do a bit of PubG, Call of Duty, stuff like that, well, these games run absolutely fine here on the standard Redmi Note 13 5G. And HyperOS, as with MIUI, has an excellent gaming mode built in as well, so you can boost that performance if you need to, free up your storage, clear the memory, etc. You've got Do Not Disturb, you can record the action. And as the name of this phone quite heavily suggests, yes, you do indeed get 5G on the Redmi Note 13 5G. I found the connectivity's been absolutely fine this past week. There was one occasion where it reckoned I had 5G and I just couldn't get any signal in Maps or any of the other apps, but you know, a quick reboot again seemed to sort that out. As for the battery tech, well, it's a 5000 mAh capacity cell, and since updating to HyperOS, I tend to generally get a full day of use from a single charge. Although I certainly find that it does run pretty close to dry by the time I'm tucked up with Teddy. And especially if I'm using the camera a lot, that does rinse the battery life pretty quick. And what's especially annoying is you only get pretty slow 33 watt wired charging support on here as well, compared with the swifter charging on the Pro models. You can't just bung a cable in it for 10-15 minutes and expect to get, you know, another 50% charge. And then last up for this lovely Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 5G review, let's check out that camera tech, which, you know, it's a pretty basic setup. You've got a 108 megapixel primary shooter here, but without optical image stabilization, regrettably. It's the usual Xiaomi camera apps, are quite easy to use one-handed. You can just drag down this menu with your thumb. Got fast access to a variety of settings, including the obligatory AI mode. You can toggle that HDR, you got the voice shutter, etc. I've taken quite a few test shots in the auto mode, and I've found that generally those colors are boosted slightly compared with the Pro models. You don't get quite as natural an output, but daytime shots generally come out quite well. You've got a 108 megapixel mode if you want to capture a little bit more detail to maybe crop into your shot later in the day. Otherwise, pics just taken in the default photo mode tend to look sharp enough when you blow them up on a big display. However, low light shots are a struggle, especially when you've got living subjects. You'll get rather murky results and some serious blurry type chunkiness if there's any kind of motion at all. The night modes can slightly reduce noise, but again, it's only useful if your subject and your hands are completely still. There's also a portrait mode with some tweakable bokeh style action, which generally works out quite well. It's quite dependable. And if you dodge through to the more section of the camera features, you'll find a dedicated pro mode, which offers the usual white balance, tweak, shutter speed, ISO levels, etc. But there's no way of actually shooting RAW format images here. You can just boost up to the maximum resolution if you want. That's basically it. The other two lenses are pretty basic, including an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter, which is absolutely fine, but don't try using it at night or anything. And a 2 megapixel macro lens that basically only exists so Xiaomi can say that it's a triple lens setup. As for shooting video, well, again, things remain pretty basic. You can only shoot at 720p or 1080p. There's no 4K option or above, and also no 60 frames per second option. And unsurprisingly, the visuals are a bit flat. The stabilization's pretty good, but certainly don't try shooting at night because everything will just be a murky mess. The good thing is that audio pickup is nice and crisp and clear. As long as there's no wind, even a slight breeze will generally f things up. And then last up, what do we have here? It's a 16 megapixel front-facing camera. This one's actually fine for your everyday shareable snaps. Here's some more pictures of me trying to look happy. And this is why I don't generally take selfies. And here is a video what I shot with the Redmi Note 13 5G using that selfie cam. And yeah, once again, it's full HD resolution, no 4K option there. But again, the audio comes through nice and clear. And that right there in a tasty wee nutshell is the fresh new Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 5G. It's been around for a month or two now, but that's what I think. I've got to say, for me, it's just a little bit too clunky and buggy right now. Hopefully Xiaomi will sort out most of the issues with various updates, but I would highly suggest just spending that little bit more on the Pro model, which I had very few issues with and just thoroughly enjoyed because the performance is better. I found the battery life was a little bit better too. There's quite a few general quality of life improvements that made it more worthwhile. But anyway, that's what this bald northern git reckons. What do you reckon of the Redmi Note 13 5G? Have you been using it as your full-time phone? Definitely give us your own mini review down in that wee section down there beneath my chatty head. Poke subscribe, ding that notifications bell, all the usual YouTube guff, and have yourselves a bloody wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.